I always wanted the last episode of the season to propel us into either a mystery or something interesting for the next season. It didn't have to be a cliffhanger, because again, cliffhangers had been done. And with Best of Both Worlds, they've been done really, really well. Really well. But I always wanted the end to look toward the beginning of the next season. So The Adversary had one of those endings where they're everywhere, or some line that was fraught with meaning that I just thought Jet propelled us, and it was a nice symmetry as well. The season began with the search, finding Odo's people. Who are they? What's going on? And now we're suddenly ending with, ooh, Odo's people. Oh boy.
Set course for Season 4 of the Depths of DS9, but before we do, it's time to look back and discuss what exactly Season 3 of DS9 actually meant. We did this for Seasons 1 and 2, and of course it's got to be done for 3, especially, I feel, because Season 3 is a really important sort of fulcrum point where we begin to transition into essentially what the show is going to be going forward. I am Captain Fist, and of course I am joined by Lieutenant Commander Gell. How are you, sir?
Doing fine and looking forward to the future.
Yes. So first off, I guess before we start, let's sort of contextualize all this. How do you feel Season 3 stacks up? I've always had this feeling, correct me if I'm wrong, that 3, perhaps even more than 1 and 2, maybe of all the seasons, Season 3 is the one that fades into the background for a lot of people. It's kind of like just a season.
And I don't know why.
It's lays bizarre. You look over the list of episodes here. Past Tense, The Search, Second Skin, Life Support, like it just goes on. The Die is Cast. It just goes on and on and on.
It lays the groundwork for literally the rest of the series.
And yet it does have kind of a blending into the background effect. I think even more than Season 1 and 2. I think more people could name you episodes from Season 1 and 2 if you asked them than they could of 3. And yet here's the hilarious part. If some people list their favorite episodes of DS9, without knowing it, they might well cite episodes that turned out to be from 3.
Yeah.
It's a weird one.
It's a strange effect.
So this is an interesting season on a lot of levels. On the business side, the beginning of this season, like the first 10 episodes or so, which is almost half the season, is really the only time that Deep Space Nine was allowed to be the Star Trek show. For 10 episodes, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, if you wanted to watch new Star Trek, it was the only show. The Next Generation, All Good Things, had already aired, and Voyager had been announced, but wasn't going to air until partway through the season. So for this very brief period, Star Trek Deep Space Nine was it. Looking over the first 10 episodes, how do you think they pulled that off? Because we start with The Search, right? Which I think is a killer season opener. I love the founders, and we get way into the Dominion. We learn about the revelation of the founders in the Dominion. We learn that Odo's people are in fact the Dominion itself. This is a huge episode. It's a 2-parter, and it warrants it. It's really good. But then you get down into House of Quark, one of the better Ferengi episodes, I think. Equilibrium, which gets dumped on by some people, but I think is one of the better Dax episodes, personally. Second Skin, The Abandoned, Civil Defense, attention Bajoran workers.
Indeed.
Meridian, Defiant, Fascination, and the 10th episode, rounding it all out, get this, Past Tense, the time travel episode where Ben Sisko goes back with Bashir and participates in that
The Bell Riots.
The Bell Riots, right? A classic episode of DS9, if ever there was one, and a callback to the original series standout, City on the Edge of Forever. So, how do you feel? Those 10 episodes, do you think if you were just a Star Trek fan who had not yet been inculcated into the cult of DS9, how would those 10 episodes? Because I feel like there's a mixed bag in there.
There is. I feel that it would be a bit more rewarding if you had been watching thus far.
Yeah.
Very strong start with the search.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we answer one of the bigger questions
exactly.
in Deep Space Nine. Who are Odo's people?
And where do they live?
Where they live?
Yeah.
Who are they? Will he ever find them? And we get a lot out of that.
Yeah, a whole lot of mileage going forward comes out of that. And I think the House of Quark is a really strong follow-up after the two-parter, actually. That's one of the better Ferengi episodes, like I said. But then we hit this lull. I think most people would not be fans of Equilibrium. I love the Trill, and I love Dax. She's one of my favorite characters. So I love that episode, and I think it's a pretty good one. That's the one where we find out she's got a serial killer host. I don't see anything wrong with that episode, even if it is.
It's absolutely fine.
I seem to remember when we reviewed it, us mentioning that it was a little uneven in its pacing, somewhat. Second Skin is a fucking killer episode.
It's a winner. It's a winner, yeah.
The Abandoned is really good. I love any episode that deals with the Jem'Hadar, and I think this episode, probably more than any of them, tells you more about the Jem'Hadar.
It tells us a lot. There will be others later,
yeah,
but this is a great start.
And who could hate attention Bajoran workers? I mean, Civil Defense, dude.
Yeah.
What a classic episode.
I'd say if you were going to watch an episode that kind of defines the series overall, this would be a great start.
It is. It's encapsulatory. It doesn't deal a whole lot with the overall political machinations of the Cardassians. I mean, a little bit. It touches on it a little bit, but it's a good, man, as bottle episodes go, DS9 did great bottle episodes. And Civil Defense is maybe the best of them all. They're stuck on the station. They're not just stuck on the station. They're stuck in one room on the station. Like, they're really stuck on the station, and they can't go anywhere. Meridian, I'm not a big hater of Meridian. I like the core idea. It does feel like a Next Generation episode, and I seem to remember when we reviewed it that the background information was a TNG episode that was just repurposed.
Yeah, it was a little too TNG.
You know what? I actually will say this. Would you agree with this? It doesn't even feel TNG, because I don't think it's good enough to be TNG.
That's what I was going to get at.
It feels Voyager is what it feels like.
Ugh.
It feels like a bad episode of Star Trek Voyager, does it not? But I think the cast carries it off. I think one of the things that saves Meridian, in my opinion, as an episode, is that the cast, we're allowed to grow up with the cast because of the serialized storytelling, right? So when we hit a planet where here's all their ancestors still living in this sort of pocket in time, us learning where they've gone in the future matters more to us, right? Like, because of the serialized, like, if that's on TNG, who the fuck cares? If it's on Voyager, why do I give a fuck? But because on DS9, episode by episode, these characters are actually evolving and developing relationships, and it's actually like everything that happens in one episode matters or has some kind of ramification going forward. I think an episode like Meridian works better than people give it credit for. But that said, it's definitely filler for season 3. Like, it's a TNG episode that's stranded in the middle of this show that was becoming more and more serialized. Okay. big development in this season. There's a lot of big developments. So the first one is that DS9 for 10 episodes is the only Star Trek show on the air. The other big one is what this next episode is named after, Defiant. The Defiant is rolled out in Season 3. Which is interesting because this is a case where Babylon 5 wound up unveiling a ship, and actually their effects department, fun fact, they interviewed one of the effects guys, and he was like, we basically made this ship that could leave the station and go out on these dangerous, missions, whatever, and then he pauses for a minute in the interview and he goes, like the Defiant. So this is a rare case where Babylon 5 looked over at DS9 and copied it. But yes, the Defiant now. And this is a good episode. Defiant is a Thomas Riker episode.
Yes, it is.
And a rather good one. I have to say, Jonathan Frakes, who I think directed the episode as well, didn't he?
No, I do not believe so.
Okay, well, anyways, he's on there, and I think he kills on that episode. It's really good. What is a more classic moment in Season 3 than him removing the fake sideburns on the beard?
It's really good. It's just cheesy enough to be almost like the Mirror Universe, original Star Trek episodes where the bad guys have beards.
Or Spock's beard,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
That whole thing. Then we hit Fascination, which I think is another filler. But one of the better Loxana Troy episodes, in fairness. I like how she's able to play that off, and I like how the crew... It's definitely a bottle episode, definitely intended to salvage some of the budget for some of the bigger episodes. But I don't hate Fascination. It's fun. It kind of reminds me of that one from Season 1 where everybody is... sort of has been possessed by this alien consciousness, and everyone's sort of reenacting a mutiny. You remember what I'm talking about? Where Sisko becomes like the paranoid captain, and all that stuff. It kind of reminds me of that a little bit, which wasn't the best episode, to be fair. But this one's a little better. I like Fascination. Okay, not one of my favorites, but it's okay. And Past Tense is one of the best episodes of DS9. Full stop.
Yes, 100%.
Past Tense 1 and 2. So you hit that. So here we go. We're in Season 3. You can already see how much more serialized we're getting just by looking at the titles of the episodes.
Yeah.
The Search Part 1 and 2, right? We're 10 episodes in and we already have two-parters. And by the way, pretty soon here, we're going to be getting into 3 and 4 and 5 parters. Like these, DS9 went ham with the multi-part episodes later on, especially in seasons 5, 6, and 7.
It shows confidence. They had stories to tell.
They did. So I guess what we'll do here is talk about our least favorite and our favorite episodes. Terran, I guess let's start with the least favorite, because this is a good season. Maybe underrated. I think underrated is a fair descriptor for this one. But every single great painting has its ultimate flaw, and I think it's fair to point out some of the duds. Terran, why don't you start us off? What is your least favorite from Deep Space Nine Season 3? And by the way, Razor Force, fellow Niners, you should hit us up on social media, hit us up on Twitter, whatever. Let us know what your least favorite episodes. I was actually thinking about possibly uploading this as a sample to YouTube, so maybe if we do that, we can have the comments section let us know. What is your least favorite episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine Season 3?
And is it the same as ours?
Is it the same as ours? Terran Gell, I'm curious. I'm wondering, what is your least favorite of Season 3?
Going over the list, I'd have to say Meridian. Like I pointed out, it is kind of like a TNG episode, and the difference there being TNG knew how to do it.
Yeah.
They really knew how to have their own separate episodes, and this... It just doesn't hold up.
Yeah, it's not as bad as it could have been, and I think it's really the cast that salvage any entertainment value out of it.
Oh, no, 100%. Everyone plays it well.
Yeah.
It's just that The story is kind of mid.
The one that sucks is Dax wanting to bone down with the dude 5 minutes after meeting him, and like basically being ready to throw her entire life away. Which boy, how did Bashir have to feel over that? She would literally rather live and die on a planet for a guy she met 5 minutes ago rather than go out to dinner with you. Jesus Christ, Bashir.
I think that's part of it for me. I don't know how it will work with other people, but for me, one serious flaw like that can completely ruin a story for me.
Yeah.
So I think that you just hit the nail on the head right there. Her just throwing herself at this dude. And there's like, they have one, maybe two scenes together for them to like fall in love and her wanting to spend the rest of her existence with him. Like, come on.
Yeah, definitely.
I am sorry. It kind of kills it for me.
Yeah, I don't like it. And I also, so that's yours. I mean, that's a respectable choice. I'm a little bit of a defender of it just on the basis that I think they pulled it off better than Voyager would have. I think it feels like a Voyager episode, and I think the cast carry it a little bit.
Oh, really high bar. Anyway.
Not a very high bar, but yeah, it's an awkwardly written, not so great episode. The core idea is kind of cool. The idea of them being caught in a pocket sort of reality.
Oh no, I mean the
and
concept.
once they solve the problem of the episode, essentially all these people die.
Once like the concept itself is fascinating.
Yeah.
I honestly think that the whole romance aspect of it kind of kills it for me.
Yeah,
like, it was not needed. It was not needed.
It wasn't, and I almost feel like instead of maybe one of the things they did that was wrong was maybe Meridian was a little too idyllic. Perhaps there should have been like a bigger problem for them to solve. Like maybe these were like survivors, like rough and tumble survivors. Think like the people who survived when their ship went down in the initial explorations of Antarctica and shit like that.
Yeah.
Who somehow managed to survive for months and months until somebody could get through the sheet ice and save them. You could, like, they get in this pocket reality years later and somehow people are still surviving. And then you get into the ethical question of, okay, once we solve this problem, these people are going to cease to exist, and all those efforts to survive are going to be for nothing. Like, that right there, that ethical question is more interesting than, I'd like your space dick. We met 3 minutes ago. Please marry me. Right? That fucking thing. That's terrible. Terrible.
And you know what? There are probably TNG episodes just like this where they solely focus on the science and the interesting parts of what's going on.
Yeah.
And they don't need to force romance into it.
Totally.
To have us invested.
Totally.
So, I mean, yeah, it kills it for me. Sorry.
The one, my least favorite, guys, is gonna be, I hate to do it to you, Ferengi fans, but this is one of maybe my absolute least favorite Ferengi episode. I didn't give it that low of a rating when we reviewed it, but the longer I think about it, I really, really don't care for this episode on a lot of levels, and it's profit motive. It's this episode. It's the episode, for those who don't know, I love Wallace Shawn as Zek, don't get me wrong. But he's not playing Zek in this episode. He comes in and he suddenly turns into a Ferengi space commie. I hate what this starts with the Ferengi. I hate the ideas they start exploring with the Ferengi with this. I hate how it's explained, oh, it was the fucking wormhole aliens, and they decided that the Ferengi, like, how racist is that? The wormhole aliens come in contact with the Ferengi, and the Ferengi is just greedy, and they go, fuck that, we're gonna change him. Like, we're gonna there's something wrong with his race, right? Basically, that's what they're saying. It's terrible. It's terrible. And so they brainwash him, and he comes back basically as a fucking communist, and he starts giving shit away, and he's gonna alter Ferengi society forever. And then the writers actually pause for a moment to think, is it okay? Would it be okay to leave him this way? Right? Fuck you! Fuck you! Give us back Zek. I don't like this episode very much. It doesn't, I mean, it's played for comedy, okay, fair enough, but some of the ethical shit underneath sucks. And I have to say, they're gonna wind up recycling this idea and doing it fucking horribly with Rom later on. And I don't like that episode at all. That episode sucks, kind of ruins Rom, ruins his arc, ruins Quark's arc a little bit too, and that's going to happen later on down the road. I feel like if you go back and watch this episode, it's sort of the fuckwit fountainhead from which all further fuckwittery flows. And unfortunately, the Ferengi wind up paying the price on that one. I don't know. What did you think of Profit Motive?
Honestly, I thought it was okay. I liked getting into the Ferengi stuff, the rules of acquisition, and of course, I love all the guys who play the Ferengi.
But they rewrite the rules of acquisition.
I know. I know, it's not your favorite. It's not my favorite Ferengi episode by far. Not at all. But I'm just comparing it with the season, and for the season, for me, it had to be Meridian.
And that's fair. I mean, keep in mind, when I'm bashing this episode, I'm not saying it's a complete turd. When we reviewed it, you guys can go back and watch that episode. I may have even given it a halfway decent rating. It's more like looking at it within the totality of the season, looking at how it sort of fits in. That's what's so interesting about DS9, because it's so serialized. You can actually go back and kind of consider, okay, how does this episode actually fit in with the overall continuity? And when I consider it within that context, yeah, Profit Motive don't hold up at fucking all. It's pointless. It ends with a fucking whitewash, a complete whitewash. Nothing changes at the end, which is, on DS9 is unctuous, especially this late in the game. We just ended Season 2 with a Jem'Hadar suicide bombing into a Galaxy-class starship, okay? And now we're halfway through the season and we're into episodes like Meridian and fucking Profit Motive, where at the end, they wave the Harry Potter wand and everything goes back to normal. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fortunately, going forward as we head into Season 4, that's going to happen less and less. Thank God, right? We're starting to get really serialized. Episodes like this just stick out like a sore thumb once you understand where this series is starting to go and how good it's going to get. And speaking of how good it's going to get, the best episodes. What are our favorites of this season? And Razor Force, of course, hit us back with yours. What are our favorites from Season 3? I won't start off. Terran, hit me with yours. What is, because holy shit, let's just talk about some of the highlights. The Adversary. Fucking, let's talk about Explorers. Explorers was a great fucking episode.
Oh, yeah. I loved Explorers.
The Die is Cast. Improbable Cause. Through the Looking Glass, even. I don't even like that shit. Through the Looking Glass. Visionary. All right? Defiant. Past tense. Just civil defense. You could go on and on and on. The Search, of course, the first one. And House of Quark. I mean, you could just go down this fucking thing. It's banger after banger. Season 3, whatever we're gonna say here, whatever we just said about the 2 episodes we consider to be not quite so hot, Season 3's a stone cold fucking banger, is it not? Like, it is just good, and it's better than I remember it. I hope that's true of Season 4 as we head through, but all right, let's do it. Let's dig in. Do you have your favorite picked?
I do. I'm wondering if there's any crossing here between our picks. I have to say, the most interesting, where the most happens, a lot of great characters interacting. I'm gonna have to say the Die is Cast.
Ooh, you can't go wrong with that one. Jesus, what an episode. You get into... It's funny, like... At the time, I feel like some of the episodes that at the time when it was airing weren't received the best are the ones that hold up the best going forward. Like, back in the day, people bitched and moaned and ovulated about the fucking Bajoran episodes. And the Bajoran episodes, years later, are some of the best shit on the show, right? It's the stuff that's building the world out, because a lot of the Bajoran episodes are what? They're also Cardassian episodes. This is a Cardassian as fuck episode. And it moves forward the Dominion storyline in a bunch of really, really key ways. And of course, what is the linchpin holding it all together? Who's the character who flows through this fucking thing and is virtually guaranteed to transmute anything into fucking 24 karat gold? It's 24 karat Garrick, folks. So talk to me about Garrick in this goddamn episode, dude.
We probably learn more about Garrick in this episode than all the previous ones combined.
Yeah,
and
maybe
I'm talking
next
about
to...
like The Wire and
Yeah.
all of those. Here we learn about his past.
His connections with the Obsidian Order, which have only been sort of obliquely referenced before.
I mean,
that.
all the interactions between him and Tane are just so good, and who can forget all the stuff between him and Odo? That last final scene between him and Odo, where we only see Odo standing in the doorway in the mirror. That's, oh my god, that's such a great shot.
Such a good episode in general,
Yeah.
but just absolutely. I'm totally there with you. I didn't pick this episode, but I could have. This would probably be for most people, maybe apart from the finale or the opener, would probably be the one that a lot of people would pick. It's the Dias cast. When you see lists of the best DS9 episodes ever, the Dias cast is usually up near the top. It's usually up in the top, 5 at least, sometimes higher than that. So completely understandable. But I love anytime it's the Cardassians. Cardassians, as you guys know, as I've said many times, are my favorite Star Trek race. And one of the reasons I love them so much is they're deeper. It's kind of the same reason I like House Merrick and Battletech. They're just, once you peel back the surface, there's more than just like with the Klingons where it's, hey, look, on the outside, they like war. And on the inside, they like war, right? Like there's not a whole lot going on there under the surface. Romulans are a little better. And by the way, the Romulans are involved in this episode. Boy, how cool is it? Every time, have you noticed this? Every time the Cardassians crisscross with the Romulans in a DS9 episode, it's fucking gold.
Oh, 100%.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah, it's really good.
The two richest of the Star Trek races in terms of their internal politics and machinations and all that stuff. Like, I feel like a lot of what TNG did with the Romulans in terms of fleshing them out and talking about their internecine struggles is kind of the same thing they did to an even greater degree on DS9 with the Cardassians. They have multiple branches of their government. They've got the Central Command. They've got the Obsidian Order. They're kind of warring against each other. There's a resistance on the rise. And of course, that's going to bear very significant fruit going forward in the series. But yeah, absolutely. The Dias cast is one of those. But I'll stop blubbering about it because you guys know it's a goddamn great episode. My choice is also a Cardassian episode, though, unsurprisingly, it's Second Skin. I love this.
Oh.
I think next to the Dias cast, this one gets most heavily into the Obsidian Order and the Cardassians. I love this episode. I believe you get into, I think Tane pops up in this one. It's been a little while since we watched this one, but you basically wind up with someone within the Cardassian government who is attempting to reform it. And he's gotten sloppy. And someone within the Cardassian government, whether it's the Obsidian Order or whatever, decides that they're going to try and root him out. And so Kira is turned into a Cardassian, and basically she has been swapped with his actual real-life daughter because they know that is, again, Cardassians. The most important thing to them, above all else, even governmental control, whatever, is family. So they know that is a weak point they can exploit. And so they swap out Kira with his daughter, and she thinks she's being brainwashed. I love the moments where you almost get the feeling like Kira is wondering herself, am I actually her? Like, what the fuck is good? Did I actually get brainwashed?
Yeah,
Was there a mind wipe?
Great acting all around.
Oh, dude, Nana Visitor crushes it. And you know she had to be so uncomfortable in that full facial appliance.
Yeah, makeup, definitely.
She had heavy makeup in that, and I think she used it. If I remember correctly, she did. She mentioned that. Like, she was so claustrophobic, and so it's kind of an imprisonment episode. She's stuck in one room the whole time. And so she used that. She used the sort of claustrophobic sense of the makeup and everything like that. She was legitimately suffering, so she used it in her performance.
Not that I have anything against Cardassians. Well, Kira did, but the makeup. I take my hat off to every actor who wore full rubber like that, day in and day out. I don't know how they did it. My call to come to work was 1:30 a.m. At 7 a.m., everybody else came in to start the day. So very quickly, poor Les Landau, who was directing, I remember after about 20, it was either 20 or 21 hours in makeup that covers my neck, covered my nose. I was so claustrophobic, and we were filming all day, and I remember going, "That's it, Les," with a real glazed look in my, "No more." And he said, "No, I've got to turn around." I said, "No more." He said, "No, I'm turning around." And it really became a standoff, and I started pulling the rubber off, going, "No, that's it." And he realized, okay, it's something we all became sensitive to. People in makeup, after a certain number of hours, you had to understand that they'd reached their limit, because it was difficult. And I was one of the most sympathetic after I had been in full Cardassian makeup. It was really tough.
I just love Second Skin. It holds up really, really well. It's a great Cardassian episode. And actually, it's interesting that my favorite episode of the season sets up your favorite episode of the season. Like, I don't think we get the Dias cast if we don't get Second Skin, because we don't know about the internal struggle in the Cardassian government. There would not have been the opportunity for the Obsidian Order to go rogue like they do in the Dias cast. Really, really cool stuff. So all in all, DS9, how do you feel it fits? Do you think better or worse than season 2 and 1?
In season 2, we got a lot of great stuff. We learned about the Maquis. We got some good Garrick stuff.
Dominion got kicked off properly.
True. If I had to stack it up, I say 3's better.
Yeah, I think it might be. I mean, 2 is my favorite season of the series, I think. Because it was so interesting how it showed... I think in season 2 you have sort of an encapsulatory example of how a non-serialized Star Trek show can turn into a serialized one. It literally, DS9 goes from being almost completely episodic to heavily serialized in one season. And that's fascinating to watch. And by the time you get to the end of season 1, you get killer episodes like Jem'Hadar and so forth that really, really hammer home what the potential of this show is. But in terms of like batting average, if you're talking batting average of the average episode in season 3, yeah, I think season 3 curb checks season 2. I just like some of the episodes maybe in season 2 a little bit better. But this one, absolutely. Season 3 is, man, it's one of those seasons that just sort of flies under the radar for a lot of people, probably because where this, believe it or not, as good as this stuff is, where DS9 is about to go is even better. It's gonna, by the end of this show had hit such a stride, no one wanted to see Deep Space Nine go. And I think this is a rare case where, look, you love TNG, I love TNG. A lot of the 7th season of TNG did not need to exist. A lot of it, I feel the quality between seasons 6 and 7 of TNG definitely took a hit, personally. There were some duds in there. DS9 doesn't. DS9, man, the 6th and 7th season fucking crush. They steamroll, right? And then it's over. It ends on a pretty satisfactory note, whatever.
It's one of the few series ever that actually knew, okay, told your story, get in, get out, it's done.
It bowed out when you didn't want it to. And that's
Right.
kind of the secret of ending on a high note, to be honest. Season 3 is sort of the beginning of, if this is a roller coaster, I feel like we're heading to the top of the roller coaster, right? We're getting to the top of that first rise. And holy mother of fuck, is the beginning of season 4 going to start us down the great big Maquis Dominion War Klingon Romulan fucking thrill ride that we're about to be on for like 4 fucking unremitting seasons. Unbelievable what we're about to hit. Believe it or not, as good as season 3 is, season 4 I think might be a little better. We'll see when we return in the season 4 premiere of the Depths of DS9. We're going to go some new places, we're going to see some new faces, and we are going to be reintroduced to a very welcome, very requested old face from one of our most beloved Star Trek series. You will not want to miss the season 4 premiere of the Depths of DS9. We're heading into the Way of the Warrior, and if you want to catch that, you have to subscribe on Unauthorized.tv, where we will be covering all of these episodes going forward. T-Boogie, any last words on season 3 before we head into season 4?
Only look forward to things to come.
Indeed. For Lieutenant Commander Gell, I am Captain Fist. Engage.
Attention, Bajoran workers. I will not allow this rebellion to succeed. If you do not surrender immediately, I will be forced to kill every Bajoran on this station.